I am Liza Doherty, and it is great to be with you this morning, Commander Cagle. We're here to talk about finding the Navy's storytellers. So as we delved into a look, of course, we began with research at how we grow the Navy communication field and how we do that, especially in a diverse way. And because of that, we're actually calling this a growth campaign, vice a communication plan. So looking at research, where we begin, right, as we navigate through getting to where we want to be, our primary research consisted of quantitative analysis, content analysis, qualitative in-depth interviews, SWOT, and a problem statement. And my colleagues will get to all of those things a little bit more in depth here momentarily. As we turn the wheel and head toward planning, we established our overall goal and objectives based on that research, and then identified target publics based on our previous conversations with you, sir, and established themes and messages. As we look toward implementation, we will rely on employing our strategies and tactics within an identified budget, which we'll touch on a little bit as well. And then as we evaluate, we'll call back and look at the program that we've established. Does it make sense given the research that we found, and based on what you're looking for? Is what we're doing making sense? And then we'll give you some recommendations. So looking to our situation analysis, no matter who we talked to throughout our research process, and that was in either surveys or in interviews, people want to be involved in meaningful work. That came up over and over. Folks are motivated by service, adventure, stability. They also want to be involved in a career that matters. So looking at our diversity, which is really why we're here, we are a pretty good example among the Navy Officer Corps in public affairs in some respects, and that's great place to start from. So for example, as you know, percentage of women officers across the Navy, 19%. Navy Public Affairs has 44%, so that's over double, that's great. However, when we look at the American population, 47% of the American workforce is women. So we still have room to grow, even in those really good numbers. However, historically marginalized communities, they account for 24% of the American workforce. Navy PAOs, while we don't currently track for this demographic, our estimates put us as low as 7% in that category. So huge opportunities there for growth. Now, as we looked at the overall picture, and Commander Cagle, as you know, small community, only 10 openings per year. 8 of our folks are typically brought in through those POCR and lateral transfer boards, meaning we only get to assess 2 OCS folks a year. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Just a correction on that.
Okay.
So the 2, yeah, historically that's what we've been doing. We've been raising that level to this past year was 8, and expecting about the same for the next year.
Correct. Actually, stealing my thunder a little bit, but go for it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So as we have looked historically at those numbers, we have had little way to build diverse growth, and that is obviously what we're seeking here. Why we're here building diverse growth. We need to go where the talent is to do that, and not where we have continued to look and not find that talent. Looking at our competition, it is tight for this talent. Only 29% of Americans that are eligible for military service. There are only 29% of Americans eligible for military service for a variety of reasons. 16% of white men actually want to serve, and that's propensity. But we have an interesting thing here that happens with the numbers. According to Gallup, Black men are at a 20% propensity, and Hispanic men are at 19% propensity. So there's actually some intersection there between our target demographic and folks that want to actually come into the military. However, within PR, looking specifically, tightening that competition further, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates in short-term growth, that's within the next couple of years, 7% growth in the field. That's almost double the national average across all careers of 4%. So, a lot of numbers, tight competition, but we are at the edge of an historic opportunity with Navy Public Affairs. Due to a lack of those transfer opportunities that you already mentioned, sir, we will grow by 500% from OCS accessions historically, over the next couple of years. And we're trying to double our number of historically marginalized community candidates coming into the community. So big opportunity. With that, we'll go back to research, looking at surveys, interviews, our competitor analysis, and we'll end with some takeaways.
Good morning, sir. Nice to see you again. My name is Philip Vanderwhite. As another introduction, really excited to talk to you today about some of the details and the results that we saw through our surveys. Starting off, keeping that goal of diverse growth in mind, we designed an online survey that captured the knowledge and attitudes of two very distinct audiences. The first being currently serving Navy PAOs, as well as surveying an audience of public relations students. In total, we collected 20 responses from those public relations students, and we collected 11 responses from active duty PAOs. Despite the small sample sizes, both were quite representative of really the target audiences that we're looking at. We'll talk a little bit about those target audiences later in the presentation. Going to our key takeaways, not key takeaways from the surveys, but two that really stood out. If we want to advance the slides to those survey results. Survey says, what do you know about the Navy? And obviously, as expected, we would hope that Navy PAOs know quite a bit. So good, that's a good start, right? But however, when you compare that to our public relations students, that sample really doesn't know a lot. They're just below neutral, more on the low end of knowledge. So comparing that to how do we feel about what's the favorability of serving in a Navy PAO career? You can see Navy PAOs, once again, pretty good results there. That's good for the community. People think that's a good idea. They're obviously in that position. They're happy with it. PR students with family military ties, an interesting fact here that we found, results show that those with a parent, a grandparent, a cousin, a distant relative that served in the military had higher favorability towards that naval service, while PR students that had no connections with the military maybe didn't think it was a bad thing, but maybe a little more neutral. So that kind of shows, oh, that could be a problem, but it's also an opportunity. And that's kind of the audience that we're going for. We want to really pull them into the higher level of knowledge, and then also by doing that, increasing favorability. So a really interesting finding that we found when we're looking at compensation is that the students were asked a question: what do they expect a starting salary for a public relations professional to be after school? 43,000 was that average amongst those responses. What was the highest? So, the carrot gets dangled. What's the most amount of money that you can't walk away from? That was 57,000. And then, so where does the Navy fit into that big picture? And you also look at the national average right there. PR professionals average nationally 62,000. That could be someone with 20 years experience. That could be someone with, 20 days experience. So you're looking at the Navy. How do we fit? We're all the way on the top end of that. When you look at tax-free BAH, you look at medical benefits. You know this probably better than anyone in this room. It's more than competitive. When you're looking at 70K for a starting salary with no experience or very little experience, that's a big strength for Navy recruiting. So some of our key takeaways from our survey findings, right there, you look at number one, naturally your brain thinks uniformed scholars, and that might be the end state that we want to get to. But right now they're not in uniform. They are in fact uninformed. They have low knowledge of the program, whether they don't know it exists or they just don't know the details. I'm not sure if you're familiar with J.G. Wentworth, sir, if you've seen those funny commercials, but call the Navy, claim your cash. It's my money and I want it now. 877 cash now. Give us a call. Because like we showed, compared to the national average from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as well as expectations from students, the Navy does better than okay when comparing those compensation. Family matters. We talked a little bit about our target audiences. Although your grandfather may tell you, sea stories and really increase that favorability, family does matter, but let's bring in those people who don't have family in the Navy, in the military in general, and make them part of the family. And then belonging. We rated respondents' thoughts, students' opinions of the Navy and what they would think diversity, inclusion, and belonging would look like, as well as what Navy PAOs think the diversity, inclusion, belonging is actually in the Navy. Although positive, both samples showed room for improvement in that area.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So as part of our research, our primary research, we wanted to do a competitor analysis and a content analysis of the different websites, videos, and other recruiting items that similar competing companies use, because it's a marketplace of ideas, it's a marketplace for jobs. We wanted to see, what are they doing? What can we learn from them? We chose our competitors from the nonprofit world, the in-house public relations world, government, and just where are the other jobs that we are competing against. Good morning, my name is Major Hector Alejandro, United States Marine Corps, and we'll talk a little bit more about this content analysis as well as competitor analysis. So like we just talked about, the starting salary is pretty competitive, although some of the private PR firms like Edelman might have a higher top level salary. The starting salary is really the near-term success that a lot of students, PR students, and young professionals are looking for. So certainly that jump makes us very competitive. As well as the websites themselves, when we looked at them, there was always diversity. There was always information about what the job entails and what the day in the life. Almost all of them had something about the day in the life of what the work is. But there also was some of the best websites had illustrations, videos, short examples of the PR plans they were actually putting together. And that really made those websites resonate in terms of, wow, this is actually what I would actually be doing as a PR practitioner in this company. So those were really useful websites we found. And then when we did a content analysis of the videos that included interviews of PR practitioners working for those companies and for those organizations were the most useful videos. They gave you that day in the life feel. They showed a person, and some of them went into their backstory. We looked at this FEMA video that showed where this origin story of how you can grow up as a survivor of a hurricane and then end up going to FEMA and working for FEMA and contributing back to the community, and of course showing diversity throughout. So that was a particularly useful video. The Edelman video we thought was really good. It showed a whole spectrum of diversity throughout the video. And we wanted to see if we can emulate the same thing in our Navy video that we'll propose later on in our tactics.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Commander Rick Moore. So another portion of our research process was the in-depth quality interviews or qualitative interviews. So for this process, we interviewed 3 active duty PAOs, 1 ensign, 1 lieutenant junior grade, and 1 lieutenant. We also interviewed 1 public relations professional who's a civilian who considered PAO, but ended up going the civilian route. We also interviewed 1 PR professional who actually has a package in for public affairs. The final interviewee was a Navy officer recruiter who wanted to get the other side of the house. So the people that were applying for PAO, and then the people or the actual gatekeepers who are getting people into the community. And some of the key findings that we thought were noteworthy. We found some interviews, some of the recruiters actually discourage people from applying to public affairs due to the low amount of quotas available per year. And then the recruiters didn't necessarily have a quota or weren't rewarded kind of for bringing PAOs in. It was more of a nice to have. So some people were encouraged to go towards other career fields where they would have more of a chance of actually getting in. Some recruiters were, through the testimony, were unfamiliar with how to bring in PA candidates, the process, the minimum required scores, the appraisal interviews, arranging 3 separate interviews as part of the PAO package. Also, some of the recruiters did not know the educational prerequisites that the public affairs community values and some of the career skills that would set up a competitive candidate in the community. The second thing we looked at in the 3 sets of interviews were, who you know matters. So access into historically marginalized communities for the Navy is low. One of the big points is the Navy officer recruiter recommended setting up PAOs, getting them out, as you mentioned before the call, to college campuses, getting PAOs out there, getting the Navy public affairs brand on campuses to improve name recognition as a career of choice. One thing that we noted that was candidates who already knew PAOs had a better chance of success in getting their appraisal interviews done and getting their packages in on time. One candidate had 24 to 48 hours notice before the packages or before the appraisal interviews was due. So we had to scramble to try to get them in. Not the most ideal process. So the officer recruiter noted that maybe CNRC should consider getting a list of PAO POCs in the regions geographically to get people facilitate their interviews and make it a lot smoother process. So we also looked at what do candidates know about Navy public affairs. It was a mixed bag. One civilian PR professional knew about the military in general. She was married to a Marine, but she had to do her own research to find out that there was actual PR field in the military, in the Navy specifically. One male lieutenant PAO had a sibling who was in Navy public affairs, and that key resource enabled him to get some appraisal interviews to help his package go a lot smoother. One civilian PR professional had childhood friends who were in the military, and she actually went to a Hispanic serving institution, learned from a professor who was a Navy Reserve PAO, so served as a mentorship role, said, hey, there is a PR field in the Navy. This is an opportunity. It's an outlet if you choose to do so. Finally, one ensign PAO also learned from a Navy college professor or a college professor who serves as a reservist in public affairs. Her mentorship was the key factor for this ensign deciding to join Navy public affairs. The final area we gathered key findings was Navy versus civilian PR jobs. One PAO noted that due to the COVID pandemic, saw that a couple of his friends were struggling to find a job or keep a stable job. So financial stability was a recurring theme. One civilian PR professional saw one of her friends had a $17,000 medical bill that she had to pay for out of pocket. Obviously a big shock to the system. So financial medical benefits that the Navy offers makes it a competitive option compared to the civilian PR field. One male ensign PAO, one of his interviews with an 05 PAO said, reinforced that the Navy is recession proof and it's pandemic proof. So it's so one less factor you have to think about when you're considering for a job. Like, will I have this job in 6 months or 12 months down the line? On the contrast, a civilian PR pro who considered Navy public affairs but decided to go the civilian route, specifically wanted to be able to give back to her community. She was a Latinx member, wanted to give back to her community, other underserved communities. Saw the Navy as a career opportunity, but wanted to stick to something that was closer to her values. She did have a number of mentors who guided her, gave her information about both fields. She spoke to 3 or 4 Navy PAOs, specifically women in Navy public affairs, about their experience as women in positions of prominence in the field, but ended up deciding to go to the civilian route.
Thanks, Rick.
So between our quantitative research and surveys and competitor analysis and our qualitative research through in-depth interviews, we developed a deep understanding of our situation. So I'm First Lieutenant Joe Wright. These are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that we identified. So something to know is that our strengths and weaknesses regarding the Navy PAO community, these are things that are internal factors that the PAO organization can't control. Opportunities and threats are outside the organization, they're external factors. So strengths, monetary compensation, advanced education degrees like the SDSU program, medical benefits, and high quality of PR work were all considered strengths that we found. Weaknesses, limited awareness of the Navy PAO community, opportunities as a PAO, and the application process is cumbersome and it's not clear what's expected. Also, weakness is inconsistent dialogue between Navy public affairs and recruiting. In most cases, there's little to no relationship between a recruiter and an active duty PAO. Some opportunities we found were that PAOs in fleet concentration areas could serve as guest speakers, guest lecturers at these universities. Another opportunity is that Gen Z students, the Gen Z generation and young professionals are drawn to activism, social justice, and service-oriented careers. So there's a lot of parallels between what they're looking for in a career as a Navy PAO. Some threats: civilian PR careers offer higher salary ceilings and competitive benefits. So, in the short term, early in your career, Navy PAO stands out amongst the rest as far as the salary offerings. But as you progress in the civilian world, the salary ceiling gets higher. The other threat is that COVID-19 limits in-person recruiting, as we all have seen. So it's harder to create those face-to-face interactions, to create those relationships with recruiters and with potential candidates because of COVID-19.
Thanks, Sweetser.
So we want to take a look at where we are now. With that, we delved into our problem statement. We focused on awareness, connections, and diversity. So as we mentioned before, our research guided us toward this problem statement generation. The young PR professionals, students, Navy recruiters have a low awareness of the Navy career itself, or the public affairs career in the Navy. The Navy PAO community wants to grow its top talent and increase diversity, but it doesn't have those strong inroads into HBCUs and HSIs, which are the key identified talent pools that we're trying to pull from. So these two factors will, the knowledge gap will prevent Navy Public Affairs from reaching its goals of increasing overall direct accessions by 500%, increasing recruitment from these target communities, the historically marginalized communities, HBCUs, HSIs, by 100%.
Sir, and to reach and achieve those growth goals and bring in diverse top talent in, what we want to do is we want to increase awareness of the Navy PAO program by 25%. We also want to improve positive attitudes towards the Navy public affairs programs by 25%. Both of those objectives, we want to accomplish those by June 1st, 2022. And then finally, we want to double application submissions for Navy PAO programs. And we want to do that by September 30, 2022. And then towards discussing those target audiences, we've kind of sprinkled in throughout this presentation and kind of identifying where they are right now and where we want them to be. Number one, our primary audience is public relations students at those HSI, HBCU institutions. They're currently a latent public, and what we want to do is bring them into the active and aware public. Same with young professionals, PR professionals, our secondary audience, currently in the latent category, wanting to bring them into the fold of being active and aware. And then recruiters, closing that gap, and we can't do this without them, obviously. We've discussed that. They are an active, aware public, but closing that loop and connecting them with public affairs officers and bringing them in as a target audience and having them part of the process and the solution is critical.
Would you guys include as a aware public but not yet active the existing PA force? Or
Absolutely, yes, sir. And we'll get into that. That's a good segue into what we want to do with that population as well.
Okay, thanks.
So we've crafted some themes and messages, mostly targeting that primary audience, and we've also got some messages that are focused on that tertiary audience of the recruiting force. I want to highlight one message in this theme of this is selfless service. And I think a really powerful message is that this is the ultimate nonprofit job. You're not going to have the highest level ceiling of your salary, but you are going to have some incredible experiences, and you're going to give back to your country in ways that you're not able to do in pretty much any other PR job. We've got some other great messages, but I really want to highlight some of the other messages in the second theme of diversity is our strength. We do have an incredible diversity within the PAO field in the Navy. And throughout the whole Navy, we have 23% of the Navy coming from historically marginalized communities. But within the field of PA, as we previously mentioned, we are in the lower side, that 6-7%, and we're trying to grow that. But the greater Navy does have some pretty good diversity that we want to highlight as far as our messaging goals there. And then our third theme of PR like no other, there's incredible opportunities within Navy Public Affairs that we think are pretty strong messages, taking a seat at the table from day one. That's not just a talking point. That's something that you get to check into your first duty station, and right away you're advising some senior commanders. So that's a really powerful message that we'd like to carry out. And then when we go look at our tertiary audience, those PR recruiter, officer candidate recruiters, we want to challenge them with the opportunity to challenge others officer candidates with the opportunity to communicate with a global audience. Not every job offers as big of a platform as the Navy does. And we think that's a useful message to share with our recruiters and get our recruiters out there supporting our mission of growing the public affairs direct accessions.
So we've done the research, we've done the planning, we know who we want to talk to and what we want to accomplish. So now what? So the first strategy that we're looking to do is building awareness. So it's about getting Navy PAOs to interact with target populations on a more regular basis, exposing the target publics to Navy experiences, focused on getting diverse, exemplary Navy PAOs to visit the historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, and other universities to showcase how the Navy does PR. Also, this would include hosting groups like PRSSA chapters to Navy ships, bring them on board to where we work to get a better sense of that environment. This is also Navy PAOs as guest speakers to present at PR conferences and leveraging Navy weeks to show, behind the scenes of how Navy PAOs do that engagement work. So you can see that there are a lot of events here that are of no cost. Some of the things that we have budgeted are the Navy weeks and the PRSSA conferences and attendance.
Yeah, thanks. And the PAOs attending Navy weeks, that's something that we can work with NAVCO because they're already sending someone up there to see if they can fund it from their end.
Okay. So the next strategy is creating compelling digital content. So we saw through our competitor analysis, through the content analysis, that we don't have as competitive of an online presence as some of these other civilian agencies. So this is something that's at low to no cost. And so if you can't meet the target publics, then create the content that can show them what it's all about. So improving the website, number one. So compared to other competing industries, like I said, not super strong. So including the personal humanized content puts a face to the enterprise on the website. Also included in this tactic and this strategy is creating a video series. Like we talked about earlier, this content can be sent to schools, can be sent to professors, students, PRSSA chapters. It's not hard to make. It's about getting junior Navy PAOs to make this content and showcasing a day in the life.
Makes sense.
Third strategy and tactic is engaging storytellers. So this is providing PAOs as mentors and guides for prospective direct accessions. Through the in-depth interviews, we saw that a lot of the junior PAOs or people that pursued a lot of research into being a Navy PAO had someone that they were connected to in the community or in the military. So we need to leverage that. Again, it's engaging target publics, exposing them to the Navy. So one thing that we like to do is host a carrier DV embark overnight. So not just bringing them to the ship, but having them stay for 24 hours on a ship to really get a more intimate understanding of what that's like. So bringing prospective candidates on a carrier, that's what we'd like to see. And then the last strategy and tactic is streamlining the application process. So we've seen that recruiters struggle to understand public affairs, the requirements to be a PAO, and what makes a good PAO candidate. So what we need to do is create informational print products for recruiters, candidates, and PAOs. So this puts the key information at the forefront of each of those three individuals. So for recruiters, it's about what makes a good PAO candidate, giving them the information to know like who they need to be recruiting to come into public affairs. And that key information. For candidates, it's about what do they need to know to be a good candidate, what's going to help them through the public affairs process, and who are some actual Navy PAOs that they can talk to get a better understanding. For PAOs, it's about what do you want a candidate to know? What are the themes and messages about being a PAO that are going to get that prospective student candidate across the finish line to be a direct accession? So those are materials that those individuals would take with them to these different events. And lastly, it's about focus groups. So focus groups with current and former PAOs to understand how to improve the appraisal process, to make it more efficient, and to improve from within the community, the recruiting process.
Okay.
So how do we measure success for our campaign? Well, long-term, it could be looking at, right now in April, the Navy celebrated a historic first. You got 4 women of color commanding Navy warships at the same time. Commander LaDonna Simpson is there in that photo on the right. And so she joined a group of elite leaders in charge of a warship. Well, maybe 20 years from now, these PR professionals that we're recruiting, you'll see 4 or 5 Navy captains coming from these historically marginalized communities. But short term, there are some simpler things we'd like to do to evaluate just based on the post-campaign survey, seeing that increase of awareness, seeing that increase of attitudes that are favorable toward the Navy. And then really the bottom line is getting those numbers that we're shooting for of those 2 to 3 personnel who actually make it through the direct accession pipeline and get their packages approved and join the Navy, go to OCS and commission as officers. So that is near-term success in evaluating for this campaign.
So Commander Kakel, we've dropped a ton of knowledge in this half hour this morning. What do we recommend after everything that you've heard? Number one, we need to build our brand with students at HBCUs, HSIs, and with recruiters. And this is really the only way that we grow. We need to impress our online audiences. As we look to bring in PR talent, if we have dated or flat or old web presences, it's not going to do us any favors. We need to improve our processes and make it easy to understand how you come into the community and how you are successfully selected by a board, step-by-step process. Lastly, we need to go where the talent is. We need to build relationships with recruiters. We need to invest time and talent into those HBCUs and HSIs. Those storytellers are there. They are hungry for what we have to offer, and we need to be going to where they are. That way they'll know they can stop looking because they've found the story. So thanks so much for your time this morning. Hector just dropped in the group chat a link where you can go to look at all of the additional materials that we've created, and we're ready to take your questions.